There are moments in history so extraordinary that if no one had written them down, they would be impossible to believe. This is one of those moments. Imagine standing in Jerusalem nearly 2,000 years ago. The city is already awake. Pilgrims crowd the narrow streets. Merchants call out to passing travelers. The scent of freshly baked bread drifts from stone ovens. Priests dressed in spotless white linen climb the steps of the temple for the morning sacrifice. Roman soldiers watch silently from the walls of the Antonia fortress. To everyone around you, it feels like another ordinary festival morning. Nothing seems unusual. Nothing seems different. But before this day is over, more than 3,000 people will make a decision that changes the course of human history. Within a generation, their message will spread across the Roman Empire. Within 3 centuries, it will outlive the empire itself. And nearly 2,000 years later, billions of people will still remember what happened here. Not because of a king, not because of an army, not because of a political revolution, but because something happened that no one could explain. History usually changes through power. Empires rise because armies conquer. Kings become legends through victory. Governments shape civilizations through laws. That is how history normally works. But the story you are about to witness follows none of those rules. The movement that would eventually become Christianity did not begin with soldiers. It did not begin with wealth. It did not begin inside Caesar's palace or inside the temple courts. It began inside an ordinary room filled with frightened people. People who had no political influence, no military protection, no clear plan for the future, just one promise, and the faith to wait for it. How could such ordinary people become the foundation of one of the largest faiths in human history? Why were they willing to risk everything? And what happened inside that room that transformed fear into unshakable courage? To answer those questions, we must travel back to Jerusalem, 50 days after the death of Jesus of Nazareth. The city had seen countless generations come and go. Its stones had witnessed kings crowned, prophets rejected, armies invading, and temples destroyed and rebuilt. Every street carried memories. Every gate held stories. Towering above everything stood the temple. Its massive white limestone walls reflected the morning sunlight with breathtaking brilliance. Ancient historians wrote that parts of the temple were covered in gold so bright that visitors approaching the city could hardly look directly at it. For the Jewish people, this was the dwelling place of God's presence. 3 times each year, families traveled hundreds of miles just to worship here. And now, during the Feast of Pentecost, Jerusalem was overflowing. Pilgrims arrived from every direction. Some spoke Hebrew, others Aramaic. Many spoke Greek. Some had traveled from Rome, others from Egypt, Cyrene, Cappadocia, Asia, Mesopotamia, lands so distant that many local residents had never seen them. The city sounded like the world itself had gathered inside its walls. Children chased each other between market stalls. Donkeys struggled through crowded streets, carrying sacks of grain and clay jars filled with olive oil. Blacksmiths hammered glowing iron. Women bargained over baskets of figs and dates. Temple musicians rehearsed the psalms that would soon echo across the sacred courts. Everything felt alive. Everything felt normal. Yet beneath the celebration, an invisible tension remained. Because only 7 weeks earlier, Jerusalem had witnessed an execution unlike any other. Most executions disappeared from memory within days. Rome intended it that way. Crucifixion was designed to inspire fear. Victims were displayed publicly so that anyone considering rebellion would think twice. When Jesus of Nazareth was nailed to a cross outside the city walls, Roman officials believed they were ending another troublesome movement. The religious authorities believed they had protected the nation from dangerous teachings. Even many of his own followers believed everything was over. They had watched him die. They had watched his body lowered from the cross. They had seen the heavy stone rolled across the entrance of his tomb. That should have been the end. History had seen many self-proclaimed messiahs before. Each movement had ended the same way. The leader died. The followers scattered. The story faded. But this time, the story refused to end. Only days after the burial, rumors began spreading through the city. Some claimed the tomb was empty. Others whispered that Roman guards had abandoned their posts in terror. Women returning from the tomb spoke of angels. Travelers reported mysterious encounters along lonely roads. Fishermen insisted they had shared breakfast with Jesus beside the Sea of Galilee. More astonishing still, hundreds of people claimed they had seen him alive. Not in dreams, not in visions. Alive, walking, teaching, eating, speaking with them. To many, these stories sounded impossible. To others, They changed everything. If those rumors were true, then death itself had been defeated. If those rumors were false, then why were his followers willing to risk their lives defending them? What could make ordinary men, who had once fled in fear, suddenly willing to face imprisonment, beatings, and even death? The answer was waiting behind a single wooden door in a quiet upper room where history was about to change forever. The noise of Jerusalem never truly stopped. Outside, life moved with its familiar rhythm. Merchants argued over prices. Pilgrims searched for relatives among the crowded streets. The distant sound of sheep echoed from the temple courts as families prepared their offerings. Roman soldiers marched across the fortress walls in steady formation, their armor catching the morning sun. To the city, it was simply another day of celebration, but hidden behind the thick stone walls of an ordinary house. Time seemed to move differently. An old wooden staircase led to a modest upper room. It was neither large nor impressive. Its walls were built from rough limestone blocks, worn smooth by decades of use. Heavy cedar beams crossed the ceiling. Small windows allowed narrow streams of morning light to fall across the floor. The air carried the scent of olive oil, old timber, and recently baked bread from the house below. Simple woven mats covered the stone floor. Clay lamps flickered quietly despite the growing daylight. Nothing about the room suggested that history was about to change. Yet within these walls, about 120 people waited together. Some prayed silently. Others whispered passages from the Psalms. Several sat with their eyes closed, reflecting on everything they had witnessed during the past 7 weeks. No one seemed eager to speak. Silence had become strangely comforting. It was the silence of people holding tightly to a promise, without knowing when that promise would arrive. Peter stood near one of the narrow windows. From there, he could hear the city below. The laughter, the conversations, the footsteps. Life outside continued as though nothing remarkable had happened. But Peter knew better. His thoughts returned to the night that had changed him forever. He remembered the cold air in the high priest's courtyard, the glow of the charcoal fire, the frightened faces surrounding him. A servant girl had looked directly into his eyes. "You were with him," she had said. Peter denied it. Another voice accused him. Again he denied it. A third time, he swore he had never known Jesus. Then, the rooster crowed. Even now, weeks later, Peter could still hear that sound. More painful than the crow itself was the memory of Jesus turning and looking at him, not with anger, not with disappointment, but with a love that pierced deeper than any sword. Peter had wept bitterly that night. He believed he had failed forever. Yet, after the resurrection, Jesus had sought him out, not to condemn him, but to restore him. On the shores of the Sea of Galilee, beside another charcoal fire, Jesus had asked him only one question: "Do you love me?" 3 times Peter answered. 3 times Jesus entrusted him with the care of his people. Peter still did not understand why such grace had been given to him, but he knew one thing: he would never run again. Across the room, John carefully unrolled a worn scroll containing the Psalms. He read softly, almost to himself, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" The familiar words settled gently over the room. John had seen more than most men could bear. He had watched Jesus breathe his final breath. He had stood beneath the cross while darkness covered the land. He had helped carry the unbearable grief of that day. Yet he had also been among the first to run toward the empty tomb. He still remembered stopping at its entrance. The burial cloths remained. The body was gone. Everything after that morning seemed impossible to explain. And yet, he had seen the risen Christ with his own eyes. Fear no longer held the same power over him. Questions remained, but doubt had disappeared. Near the center of the room sat Mary, the mother of Jesus. Her hands rested quietly in her lap. Unlike many others, she did not seem restless. She understood something the others were still learning. Throughout her life, God had rarely explained his plans in advance. He had simply asked for trust. When the angel first appeared to her in Nazareth, she had not understood. When her family fled into Egypt, she had not understood. When 12-year-old Jesus remained behind in the temple, she had not understood. Even at Calvary, standing beneath the cross, understanding had given way to sorrow. Yet every promise God had spoken had been fulfilled in its proper time. Waiting had become part of her faith. Perhaps that was why peace rested so naturally upon her face. Hours passed. Prayers continued. Someone quietly began singing the words of Psalm 121. Others joined in. Their voices remained gentle, almost fragile. "I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from?" Outside, Jerusalem celebrated another feast. Inside, heaven was preparing another kind of celebration. None of them realized that this ordinary morning was about to become one of the most extraordinary mornings in human history. And somewhere beyond the walls of that quiet room, the first breath of a heavenly wind had already begun to move. The first light of dawn spilled across the hills surrounding Jerusalem. Golden rays crept slowly over the city's ancient limestone walls, bathing rooftops in warm light before reaching the streets below. One by one, the city awakened. Wooden shutters opened. Smoke curled from stone ovens. Roosters crowed from hidden courtyards. The smell of fresh bread drifted through the cool morning air. Before long, the silence gave way to movement. Families stepped into the streets dressed in their finest garments for the Feast of Pentecost. Children hurried ahead, laughing as they weaved between travelers. Merchants arranged baskets overflowing with figs, dates, olives, and pomegranates. Donkeys carried sacks of grain toward the markets. Every road leading to the temple became increasingly crowded. From every direction, pilgrims flowed into Jerusalem like rivers joining the sea. Some spoke Hebrew. Others greeted friends in Greek. Many conversed in Aramaic. A few spoke Latin with unmistakable Roman accents. The city had become a meeting place for the Jewish world. Different languages, different cultures, one destination, the temple. High above the city, the great courts of the temple were already alive with activity. Priests in spotless white linen moved with practiced precision. Silver trumpets announced the beginning of the morning service. Levites gathered together to sing the psalms. The voices rose across Jerusalem like waves carried on the wind. Thousands paused for a moment. Some bowed their heads. Others quietly joined the familiar words. 4 generations. This had been the rhythm of Pentecost. Predictable, sacred, unchanging. No one imagined that before the day ended. History itself would take an unexpected turn. Not far from the temple, hidden among ordinary homes, the upper room remained quiet. The contrast could not have been greater. Outside, the city grew louder every minute. Inside, only whispered prayers filled the room. Some believers stood near the windows, watching the growing crowds below. Others remained kneeling. Several quietly recited the words Jesus had spoken before his ascension. Do not leave Jerusalem. Wait for the Father's promise. You will receive power. Power. The word lingered in every mind. But what kind of power? Would God send an army from heaven? Would Israel finally be free from Roman rule? Would the long-awaited kingdom appear before their eyes? None of them knew. Perhaps that uncertainty was the hardest part. Waiting is easy when you know the day and the hour. Waiting becomes far more difficult when all you have is a promise. Yet no one suggested leaving. Not one person questioned why they remained. They had seen too much to walk away now. Peter slowly crossed the room. His eyes met those of Andrew, then John, then the others. No words were needed. Each face carried the same mixture of expectation and uncertainty. Only weeks earlier, fear had scattered them. Now, hope held them together. It was a quiet kind of courage. Not loud, not dramatic, simply the determination to remain faithful until God chose to act. Outside, Jerusalem continued celebrating. Inside, heaven was waiting. The room had grown unusually still. Even the whispered prayers faded. The only sounds came from the streets below. A wagon rattled across uneven stones. A child called for his father. A flock of doves burst into the morning sky above the rooftops. Everything felt completely ordinary. So ordinary that no one could possibly have guessed what would happen next. History often arrives without warning. There is no trumpet announcing the moment. No messenger running through the streets. No sign written across the sky. Life simply continues. Until, in a single heartbeat, everything changes. Then, someone near the window lifted his head. At first, it was almost impossible to notice. A faint sound, distant, unfamiliar, not loud enough to interrupt conversation, not strong enough to alarm anyone. It was unlike the noise of the marketplace, unlike the songs rising from the temple, unlike the footsteps echoing through the narrow streets. For a brief moment, everyone remained still. Peter looked toward the ceiling. John slowly rolled up the scroll in his hands. Mary opened her eyes. The room fell completely silent. The sound grew stronger, not from the streets, not from the temple, not from the hills surrounding Jerusalem. It seemed to come from somewhere beyond the world they knew. No one moved. No one spoke. Every heart waited. And then, the impossible began. No one spoke. The room stood frozen. The strange sound continued to grow. At first, it resembled a distant breeze passing through the hills beyond Jerusalem. Soft, almost gentle, yet with every passing heartbeat, it became stronger, deeper, more powerful. Peter slowly rose to his feet. His eyes searched the faces around him. No one understood what they were hearing. The windows remained still. The hanging oil lamps barely moved. Outside, the morning air was calm. Not a single tree bent in the wind. Yet the sound continued to build. It no longer seemed distant. It was coming closer, closer, and closer, until suddenly, the entire house trembled beneath its force. A roar exploded through the room. Not the roar of thunder, not the crashing of waves, not the violence of an earthquake. Luke would later struggle to describe it with ordinary language. The only comparison he could find was this: a sound like a mighty, rushing wind. Not wind itself, but something that sounded like it. The noise filled every corner of the house. It echoed through the wooden beams. It rolled across the stone floor. It surrounded every person in the room. Yet something remarkable happened. Nothing was destroyed. No roof collapsed. No furniture overturned. No lamp was extinguished. The sound carried overwhelming power, without bringing destruction. It was unlike anything anyone had ever experienced. Every face turned upward. Every prayer stopped. Every heartbeat seemed suspended. Then, another wonder unfolded. Above each person, small flames appeared. Not ordinary fire. The flames did not consume the wooden ceiling. They did not burn clothing. They produced no smoke. Instead, they separated, resting gently above each believer. It looked as if heaven itself had reached down, placing a visible sign upon every person in the room. Peter stared in amazement. John could barely breathe. Mary quietly closed her eyes. Around the room, men and women who had spent days waiting now found themselves standing inside the very promise Jesus had spoken. No one had imagined it would happen this way. No prophet had described every detail. No one could have prepared for this moment. The promise had arrived. Then came something even more astonishing. Words began flowing from their mouths. Languages they had never studied. Voices unlike their own. Some spoke with sounds unfamiliar even to themselves. Others proclaimed the greatness of God in languages they had never heard before. There was no confusion inside the room. No panique. No fear. Only overwhelming joy. The fear that had haunted them since the crucifixion simply vanished. The men who had hidden behind locked doors now stood filled with a confidence that did not belong to them alone. It was as though an invisible fire had ignited within every heart. Not the courage born from human determination, but courage given by God himself. Jesus' final promise echoed through Peter's mind. You will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you. Now, he finally understood. This was the power, not swords, not armies, not political authority. The power to become fearless witnesses. Outside, people stopped walking. The sound pouring from the house had spread into the surrounding streets. Pilgrims looked toward one another in confusion. What was that? Merchants stepped away from their stalls. Temple worshippers paused in the middle of their conversations. Roman soldiers turned toward the noise. Within minutes, crowds began moving through the narrow streets. Hundreds, then thousands, drawn toward a single ordinary house. As the believers stepped outside, the miracle continued. Voices filled the air. Pilgrims from distant nations suddenly heard their own native languages. A visitor from Egypt froze in disbelief. A merchant from Cappadocia looked at his companions in astonishment. Travelers from Rome stared at one another. How can this be? These are Galileans. How do they know our language? Confusion spread through the crowd. Some stood speechless. Others looked upward in awe. A few fell silent, unable to explain what they had witnessed. Yet not everyone believed. Some laughed. Others mocked. They have had too much wine. The accusation spread quickly through the crowd. Peter heard every word. Only weeks earlier, he would have lowered his head. Only weeks earlier, fear would have kept him silent. But not today. Not anymore. He stepped forward. The crowd slowly quieted. Thousands of eyes turned toward the fisherman from Galilee. Peter drew a deep breath. The man who once denied Jesus before a servant girl was about to speak before the entire city, and his words would change thousands of lives.